Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I don't know how you got here, but I do hope that you'll stay until the end because in this particular video, we're going to talk about bubble diagrams. Now, what exactly is a bubble diagram? To put it simply, a bubble diagram is what designers use to organize their thoughts. In the case of architects, it's what we use to organize spaces of a project, simply put. We don't necessarily have to draw the bubble diagram to scale. Like I said, it is a freehand drawing, so we want to be as free as possible, but also as much as possible, we have to draw the bubble, or we want to draw the bubbles in the diagram in such a way that they are proportionate in size relative to each other. That way, as we move further into the project, we don't start questioning ourselves into like, wait a minute, why is it bigger here, but in the plan it got smaller or something like that. We want to kind of avoid those we want to avoid those doubts in our head. So in this particular example, we're going to use the matrix diagram that we made in the past for our imaginary two-story home. Just a quick review. A matrix diagram shows the relationship between spaces in terms of how they contact each other with the colors that we've assigned here, which is green for direct contact, yellow for indirect contact, and red meaning they don't necessarily have to make contact. Okay. So let's begin with the topmost listed space here for our matrix diagram, which we're kind of going to work on like a site development plan. So we're going to make a bubble diagram for the site of this two-story home. So the first item on the list is the home itself. So let's go ahead and draw a bubble that will represent the home. All right, let's see if I can do this properly. All right, there we go. First try, baby. So we have here the home. Not so good on the writing, but we'll work on that. I'm getting a bit of lag here on my drawing pad, but it's all right. It's all right. We can manage. So, yeah, like I said, we want to make sure that all the bubbles are relatively proportionate in size to each other. So the next item on our list we have is the porch or terrace. I believe I mentioned this before when we were making the matrix diagram. This doesn't necessarily mean that we only have one porch terrace. This can mean that we have a porch, we have a terrace, we have multiple porches and terraces, or it can mean that we just have one. But in this particular case, let's say that it means we have one porch, we have one terrace. And in our matrix diagram, it shows that the porch and the terrace are both directly into contact with the home. So usually porches are on in the front of a home. So we're going to go ahead and draw a bubble here, and we're going to go ahead and label that the porch. Okay. And then we're going to draw a bubble in the back, which is a bit larger because I feel like the terrace should be a bit larger since it's in the back, so it can be more private for the user, the client. So we're going to make it kind of a bit larger than the porch is. This also helps us in a way because terrace is a bigger word than porch. It has more letters. So now it fits. But the main reason is that it's going to be in the back. Okay, so like I said, relative in size, the bubbles are relative in size to each other. So we have the home, which is like bigger than the porch and the terrace, but both the porch and the terrace are outside of the home. That's why we have it on a separate item on the list. Next, we have the garden. The matrix diagram states that it is directly into contact with our porch and terrace, but indirectly into contact with our home. As you can see here in the bubble diagram, I kind of drew the porch and the terrace bubbles overlapping the home bubble. That's how we're going to represent that. In this instance, that's how we're going to represent that they're into direct contact with each other. But like I said, so this is a freehand drawing, and this is actually the bubble diagram is kind of a representation of your character as a designer. So if you have your own way of doing a bubble diagram to show that certain relationship, then feel free to express yourself because when you express yourself to the bubble diagram, since this is like the first actual drawing that you'll usually use to interact with your client in terms of like the actual design, it kind of says a lot to the client, like, oh, this is kind of their style, like this is how they kind of approach it. Um, so if you're a bit messy when you do the bubble diagram, the client can see that you're kind of a bit rushed, or you're not so keen on the doing the process. If it's more colorful, they can see that, oh, you're like very, interested in how the light works on your project, stuff like that. If you're more organized, they can see that you're kind of very strict on how you make your plans, stuff like that. And all of these can be negatives and positives. It all depends on how you interact with your client as well. So on the next item, we have the garden. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be one garden. It can be multiple gardens. But in this instance, the garden is directly into contact with the porch and the terrace and is in indirect contact with the home. So, how are we going to do that? We can say that since it's going to be in direct contact with the porch and the terrace, we can kind of make like bubbles for gardens here. Okay. Okay. Excuse me. I had a hefty lunch. Sorry. So in this instance, we have two gardens, one in the back, one in the front. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. And another way that we can kind of make we can kind of we can kind of show that their relationship between each other is we can use like symbols. What kind of symbols? That depends on you, but in this particular drawing we can just kind of make it simple. We can say we have these arrows maybe, so these are in direct contact with each other. That one was a bad arrow. There. So very, very basic. So this is not a very clean drawing, but we'll get to that a bit later as well. And then we can also say that the garden is indirectly connected to the home. And the way we can do that is we can maybe draw a dotted arrows, right? So maybe it can be on the other side. Okay. So those are the symbols. You can always make a legend on the side. Another way you can do it is, even if you'd like, you can just use colors to identify the way that they're connected with each other. You can like use colorful arrows instead of making dotted and solid lines. But as we move on to the next item, we have the pool. So the pool is in direct contact with the garden, the porch, and the terrace, and indirect contact with the home. So we can actually make that work by, so we'll go ahead and go here. We can make that work several ways, but I want it to be like a large pool. That's kind of how I envision this family's pool. They have like a large, long pool. So we can kind of connect it this way. Yeah. So another thing, while we're approaching this bubble diagram, we're kind of excuse me, it's really hot here in the Philippines, but we're kind of the way we're approaching it is we're showing where everything is also. We're not just placing it anywhere we want. We're already kind of dictating like this is where this goes, this is where that goes. We're not, so we're making it possible to follow the matrix diagram, and we're also making it possible to translate it into an actual plan. So in this particular case, I have the pool here. So it's like this long, long item here. So we'll go ahead and label that as the pool. Okay. And it's connected to the garden and the terrace and the porch. So we can also draw arrows there. Don't be afraid to overlap things. Just kind of like make sure that everything is still makes sense to you. To the client, at this point, it doesn't have to make too much sense to the client because we're still kind of we're still trying to make this happen. We're still trying to make this project into something real, but it's not there yet. We're still on that phase, like it's all an imagination. But it's an amazing imagination. You know why? Because it's your imagination. Okay, so we have the pool is connected to those, the porch, the terrace, the gardens, indirectly connected to the home. So let's say like here we'll have another dotted line connecting to the home. Can you kind of imagine it though? Can you kind of see what I'm seeing? Like, okay, so it's not directly connected to the home, but there's like this indirect contact to it. So maybe there's like some sort of barrier, like maybe there's, you know what I mean? Like you can kind of see what's going on here in the bubble diagram alone. Now, perhaps our outputs might differ, but in this sense, since I'm the one making it through my vision for the client, you guys can kind of like most likely already imagine something that's happening here. You can kind of see what I'm seeing, even though it's not a solid object yet. It's just a bunch of bubbles. Okay. So next we have the parking. The parking is not connected to the pool, so no connection to the pool. We want the parking away from the pool. We want it to have indirect contact to the garden, probably because we don't want too much noise in the garden. So that's why in the matrix diagram we kind of silenced it from there. Uh, Direct contact to the porch or terrace, so it doesn't have to connect to both of them. We can still just pick one of them. Direct contact to the home. Okay. Um, so let's go ahead and put the parking way over here on this side. Let's go ahead and make a bubble here. So it's not really connected to the garden. Okay. It has like indirect contact. Okay. So let's go ahead and make a dotted line here. Solid and solid. And of course, let's label it. This is the parking. Ah. My writing is getting worse as this progresses, but don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to the vision. Okay, so next we have the gazebo. The gazebo is not connected, or no, it has indirect contact to the parking, but no contact to the pool. That's an interesting thing. I don't know why I did that, but this was a while ago. I'm a bit late on keeping up with this series. I'm sorry, but so indirectly to the parking, not connected to the pool, and then we have it connected to the garden, indirectly connected to the porch or terrace, and not connected to the home. Let's go ahead and have the gazebo in the back. How about that? That sounds like an interesting spot. But we also have to have it indirectly connected to the parking. So let's put it a bit closer, I suppose. Somewhere around here, let's say. Let's just label this with a G, because gazebo is a bit of a big word, too many letters. And since it's indirectly connected to the parking, we're going to go ahead and make a dotted path here. And direct contact to the garden, correct? That's right. Direct contact to the garden. So there, okay. And finally, we have the access road, which is directly connected or indirectly connected to the gazebo. So no connection to the gazebo. Directly connected to the parking, no connection to the pool. Indirect to the garden, no connection to the porch, no connection to the terrace, no connection to the home. So I guess we could put it here then. So this kind of also helps us figure out the orientation of our building because we haven't figured it completely out yet. Like I know that the porch is in the front and the terrace is in the back, but that doesn't mean anything yet. So we're kind of still working. We're still working on how this is going to come out. So we'll go ahead and label this the access road. So not everything has to be a bubble. So obviously, since it's a road, we can just make it two parallel lines. Well, use your imagination. Let's just imagine that those are parallel lines. But anyway, in this case, we can see that connected to parking, check. Indirectly connected to the garden, so check. And everything else is kind of blocked off. So there, we already have an idea of what our house is going to start developing into, what our proposed two-story home is going to start, how it's going to start taking shape. And we've also, as I mentioned before, we should, in these bubble diagrams, we should work from macro to micro. Why? because when we work from macro, we have less identified spaces to work with actually, and this helps us organize our thoughts better. So this is just a part. This bubble diagram is just one of many bubble diagrams for one project. You're going to make a bunch of different bubble diagrams. Like right now, you have a bubble diagram just for the site. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to work on a bubble diagram for the home itself. You're gonna interior designers will start working on bubble diagrams for like the living rooms or the kitchens, the stuff like that. Landscape architects and designers will work on the gardens. They'll do their own bubble diagrams. Architects are like we don't technically do everything. We we are hired to do things based, on an architectural level because the architect is like the planner of the whole thing. Like we make the plan, we set the tone for everything, but we still, I still encourage that we get architects should hire people to like assist in fulfilling this plan. Like, because if an architect just does it all by themselves, then it's just going to be madness, complete madness. And plus, I don't feel that, I don't feel like an architect should shoulder everything themselves because that's kind of selfish. Like the only reason that I can think of that most architects will do everything is because they want to make all the money for themselves. And I can't think of a reason why you would need that much money for all those items. Like, help some people out, especially in these times where, people are trying to just struggle to just put food on the table. Like, there's nothing wrong with just tossing someone a bone. I do it all the time, and it makes me feel good inside because, I'm able to eat, they're able to eat, everyone's able to be happy. And, it's just, I don't know why, but it makes me feel good inside to do those kind of things, share the blessings, as they say. But anyway, this is how we would approach the creating of a bubble diagram, and in this particular case, the forming of your site development plan. It's very rough, I'll admit that. But this isn't like the final product of your bubble diagram. But when you make bubble diagrams, they're all freehand drawings, but you're kind of uh, making it more and more concise as you go along. So this is like a very rough bubble diagram, but I myself, like this is what I start with, but I do redraw it at least two or three more times. That way, it'll look nicer. It will have that feel that I'm trying to impart onto my clients, and it will also be easier to understand. Like this particular drawing is easy for me to understand. Now, if I'm in a rush, yes, I will give this to the client just so they have an idea, especially if they're rushing me. But I do make it to a point to explain to them, like, yeah, this is what I did in this amount of time. But I promise you, give me a few more days, we can refine this a bit more and we can go further into the project. If you're not happy with this, then we can end it right here. We can just cut off this. We can settle our services and our negotiations and call it a day for both of us. But yeah, and the sad part is that does happen sometimes, but it's okay. At least you're not, at least you're making an effort to do right. Okay. So, like in this particular case, if you want, well, the particular lesson is already over. So if you don't want to watch the rest of this, but if you're kind of interested, I'm not going to really do any better right now. I'm just going to kind of expound on what we've created here. But if you want, what you can do is like you can go ahead and take this. You can get the color like, let's say we'll get the color, sorry. Let's get the color like dark blue. There we go. And then we want to use a thicker pen size. Let's say we'll make it 45. And then we can kind of trace over this. Bam. Whoop. And then for the pool, we're going to use like a light color blue, maybe somewhere around here. Yeah, that one right there. So we'll go ahead and make this one color blue. A light blue. Ah, shoot. Sorry, I'm not very good at drawing on tabs yet. It's another reason you should like pay your architect properly. It's not easy to use all of these things. Like a lot of people, they think they can do it themselves, which they probably could, but you kind of, should show you should show a bit of respect. It's not easy. Mm, and especially right now, I'm getting a bunch of lag, so it's kind of affecting my output as well. Okay, so we have that. So it's a bit of a light blue. Then let's say for the porch and terrace, we want to go for a bit of an orange color because they're kind of outside and we want to have like a warm feel to it. So let's go a bit here into the red territory, red, yellow. Mm, come on, give me what I'm looking for. There we go. Bit dark, a bit lighter. There we go. So here we can put the porch. Ah, and I'm getting so much lag, I'm sorry. Porch, terrace. Can you guess what color we're going to use for the garden? That's right, pink. No, I'm joking. We're going to use like a green tone, kind of a dark green tone here. Go ahead and circle that one. Go ahead here in the front as well. There. So like if we erase the original layer, so there we have a bit more color. We can start shading it. We can start labeling it with, better handwriting, not rushed handwriting, so forth and so forth. We can express ourselves through the bubble diagram. So like I mentioned earlier, this is our first interaction with the client using actual drawings. And through the bubble diagram, we can kind of just say like, this is me. This is me as a designer. I hope that I can achieve what you're looking for. If not, no hard feelings. Uh, and yeah. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and end that here. I hope this made sense. First of all, I hope you were able to learn something from this. If there are some things that I might have missed out on, please feel free to comment down below. Let me know. I don't know who I stole that from. I think it's like a movie. I'm pretty sure it's a movie guy. But anyway, as always, I hope we can always take care. I hope you guys always better yourselves. I'm saying always too much. It's so cringe, but anyway, bye bye.